Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. You'll notice we are still not in the usual filming place. It is day 14 post-op. I'm still not quite feeling up to standing to film like normal, but I am still feeling up to filming. And I'm not doing very good, as per usual, taking a break. But in my defense, it is because with all of my downtime, I have been doing a ton of reading, and I've been trying to make my way through my very large to-be-read pile with a lot of books that I think are relevant to piercing and tattooing in the industry and stuff. And I just finished one that was so good that the first thing that I wanted to do was sit down and make a video about it. So the first book that I ended up tackling off of my TBR pile is The Last Empire. And this book really kind of surprised me in how good it was and how impactful I found it and how much I enjoyed reading it. I think I found out about this book through Rachel LeBron. I think I saw it on like a story she posted on Instagram maybe, or maybe a Facebook post. But it is about the De Beer diamond empire. And I was immediately very interested in it. I think anyone who is very involved in the industry or very involved with like genuine stones or things like that knows obviously that there is a pretty not so great history behind how we've gotten a lot of the stones that we have today, and especially in the diamond business. And already on my TBR list is Brilliance and Fire, which is a really good history of the diamond. And I honestly think that's a good starting point for anyone in the industry, but particularly front of house or piercers who are working with a lot of gold. And so I knew I knew of the existence of the De Beers Corporation and their sort of like monopoly and almost like syndicate over the diamond industry and what that had done. I knew it was rooted in South Africa, and they had a lot of hand in apartheid in South Africa and issues there, but I didn't know more than a very like superficial understanding of the way diamond mining and the De Beer Company shaped South African politics and just sort of like human rights on the African continent as a whole. This book really delves into that, and it goes from the first discovery of diamonds in South Africa all the way up to very near modern times, and does an incredible job of breaking down just how much the people involved in what would become the De Beers Corporation had a hand in politics, in marketing, in culture, and in some really, really genuinely horrible systems of what amounted to slavery and indentured servitude, and the continuation of apartheid in South Africa and the colonization of Africa as a whole. So much of the terror and the atrocity that happened across South Africa happened bankrolled by De Beers and by the money that that corporation brought in and by the profit they were able to turn by paying essentially slaves. Like, they might shy away from the use of the word slavery, but coerced indigenous people into years-long contracts for $4 to $5 a month wages and inhumane living circumstances, terrible food, low nutrition, jobs that were very dangerous where people often lost their lives or got injured. A man lost his legs above the knee and got workman's comp of $8 a month. Like, to read the details of this and the knowledge that the men at the head of this company had about this and the way that they put profit over people, you know, no part of me thought that like the diamond and genuine stone industry was like a wholesome, fun place. But to see the history of it really laid out like this it's chilling. And it's sad, and it's hard to read at times. This book puts it together in a way that is very engaging, and despite the fact that the book was at times a bit dry, it really did a fantastic job of painting this timeline and laying everything out very succinctly, and it presents a lot of the atrocities that are happening in such a like cut and dry and factual way, so easily linked to how the policies of this corporation allowed for these things to happen. It's meticulously researched and very, very, very well put together. That I picked this up maybe 4 days ago, and 2 or 3 days into reading it, I couldn't put it down, and I devoured almost the last 200 pages last night. I had a little 2 chapters left to read this morning, but I just couldn't put it down once it really got going. And I think for me, why I think this stuff is important for us to read, it's important for us as the piercing industry is migrating more and more towards fine jewelry. There's more and more piercing studios that are gold only, genuine stone only. There's more push and more movement for genuine diamonds and high quality diamonds at that, and genuine stones in the industry. And on one hand, I think all of this it's good for the piercing industry. It's profitable for the piercing industry. It allows us to do jewelry that is what a lot of our clients want and are seeking and like the look of and like the aesthetic of. And I think there is a lot of positive for our industry, primarily from a financial place, in us doing more with genuine stones and genuine pieces. But we would be remiss as an industry that claims to be built of misfits and punks to not understand the history behind the jewelry and stones we're getting into and the ethics of who we support with some of this stuff. Piercing already has enough problems with colonization, cultural appropriation, labor exploitation, wage fraud, all of these things. And as the industry starts to move more and more towards fine jewelry, how are we continuing to perpetuate these systems that cause untold amounts of harm to indigenous populations, a world away? How are we even attempting to ethically source these things and go about this in a way that is in alignment with the values that we say are at the core of body piercing? And reading this really posited a lot of questions for me about the jewelry companies I work with, about the jewelry that I push, and about the line between needing to make a profit and make a living and earn a wage and wanting to do so in a way that is ethical and safe. Especially as you get into the middle of this book and you start to really see, as the De Beers Corporation begins to become a corporation, as they're buying up all of these mines and all of these other things, and as they're encouraging the system of apartheid in South Africa because it allows them to pay black workers pennies to the dollar that they pay white workers, as they talk about the need to keep black workers ignorant and underpaid in order to continue turning a profit. And a terrible understanding of the horrible situations that these men are put into and the horrible lives that these men lead, and an understanding that is just sort of the price of doing business. It's very hard to read. And, it made my mind wonder, is there a reality where we see a studio that is very gold heavy and higher end piercing studio that does entirely synthetic stones? Or does entirely lab-grown or lab-created stones? Or if they do genuine stones, they're all the highest level of ethical sourcing. Because I'm going to be so real with you right now, there are some companies in the piercing industry that are using ethically sourced gems. There's a lot that aren't. Or when they say ethically sourced, they mean the lowest level at which you could claim a piece was ethically sourced, and they're turning a blind eye to a lot of channels that stone might go through. That's not the most ethical, because there are some mines that do ethical stone production, ethical diamonds, things like that. There's a couple mines in Canada that do very, very ethically sourced, ethically produced. The working conditions are as safe as they can be. The workers are well paid, all of this stuff. Those stones are expensive. Ethically mined stones are expensive. People already don't want to pay the price of genuine stones as it is, with a lot of them being sourced from companies that I'm going to be honest, we know have questionable ethics or questionable sourcing, and that's already more money than people want to pay for body jewelry. So to double or even triple that price to put not only a genuine stone in it, but a genuine stone that didn't come at the expense of someone's exploitation somewhere down the production line, I don't know if people would pay for it. I don't know if people would pay for it. So then that begets the question of, what if we saw a reality where there was a studio or a company that went fully lab created, fully lab grown, identical on a chemical composition level to the natural stones that come out of the earth. It happened in a lab instead of from the earth. Well, already people don't want to pay for lab grown or lab created stones the same prices they pay for genuine stones that come out of the earth. Even if we do pitch it as like an ethical alternative, would people pay for that? Would a studio that stocked only jewelry like that stay in business very long? Could it afford to pay a living wage to its piercers and to its front of house? I'm reading this book and I'm thinking all of this during a time when a lot of other reputable piercers I know that are working in good studios with good jewelry, doing good safe piercings, are not able to make ends meet. I'm seeing piercers talk about how they're struggling to pay rent or keep groceries on the table or just afford to live their life. I'm seeing piercers who work at some of the oldest and best and most well-known studios in the country post online about how they can't afford rent because money is tight. People aren't tipping the way they used to. In much of this industry, a lot of your income is still tip-based, and it's been a tough year. And so already we have studios that are using jewelry that, again, there are a lot of companies that are ethically sourcing their stones, but there's a lot of companies that a lot of us work with that are not, or there's maybe a big question mark there, They're saying it's ethically sourced. They get it from whatever vendor claims to be ethically sourced, but before it reaches that vendor, is it? Do we have the paper trail to prove that? A lot of times we don't. Or a lot of times, we're taking people's words for it. There are a lot of very popular higher end companies out there that I would be shocked to find out we're actually using fully ethically sourced stones, especially for the price point they're able to get for some of their pieces. I would be shocked. And don't even get me started on lower quality companies that are still advertising gold and diamonds and genuine stones. For some of those prices, ain't no way that is ethical gold or ethical stones. Not a chance. And some places might have ethical stones that, no one bled over to mine, but maybe their jewelry production facilities aren't ethical. There's so much that goes into it. And this book really had me questioning where those flaws are in the piercing industry and what we can do to change them or improve them and be a more ethical industry and take care of people at every point in the stage of production. But it also really made me question, could we survive if we did all of that? If we really did everything the right way, from the stones as they came out of the earth to the ore as it came out of the earth, to the facilities that smelt it and purify it, to the diamond cutters, to the people who eventually set the stone and make the jewelry, to the studio and how it pays and cares for its piercer, to the client getting a good, safe piercing. Would it be sustainable? What it would cost for it to be ethical at every point in the process? And right now, the answer is no. Because we're already cutting a lot of those corners, if I'm being honest. So many reputable piercers work in great studios and are underpaid and are struggling right now. So many people work at reputable jewelry manufacturers making safe jewelry and are underpaid or are overworked or are treated poorly. And as it goes further down the production line, it oftentimes just gets worse. So already we're cutting corners to make things as affordable as we possibly can with a lot of labor exploitation. And we still can barely afford to keep studios open and keep food on the table and pay our rent. And people can still barely afford piercings at a lot of these studios. So it's untenable right now in my mind for the industry to see such a big shift and have things be successful at every point in the process. And you know, I'm gonna put this on my media list, and we'll see how many people actually read it. We'll see how many people actually are interested. So often when I put these books on my media list that I think are so important to what we do and pose such important questions and offer such important education to us in this industry, unless it's directly piercing and modification related, very often people don't read it. Very often people don't think about it. It's so much easier and so much more comfortable to just focus on the piercing part of things and put our heads in the sand and not think about the larger systems and larger implications and larger things that go into what we're doing. But I really truly believe that if we want to see this industry become a better place, and if we want to see the industry become more ethical and safer and better for everyone who's in it, it involves the uncomfortable reality of getting education about these subjects and confronting the way in which our industry contributes to these things, the way in which we contribute to these things, and asking ourselves really difficult questions about how we can be better, how we do better, and having these uncomfortable conversations. As someone who's worked in a lot of very gold heavy and genuine stone heavy studios, as someone who's taken classes at the GIA, I have 4 degrees from the Gemological Institute of America. I have supported a lot of this and a lot of this monopoly and this syndicate that has had this just terrible hold on the diamond and stone and gold industry for a long time. And as I have pushed genuine stones very heavily online and pushed certain brands and companies online in the past and focused on being a seller and selling as much gold as I could at studios that I worked at before, I have 100% found myself another cog in the machine of making a handful of white men billions and billions and billions of dollars a year while people starve and die in their mines to produce these stones that we then sell. And I say this wearing a face full of gold jewelry with a lot of genuine stones. You know, I'm not going to pretend that there's not a level of hypocrisy here in that. And I work at a studio that still does a decent amount of gold. And I'm going to continue to sell gold and genuine stone jewelry. There's things that we can do with these materials that we can't with other materials. There's aesthetic histories, things like that. But I am going to do what I can to try and do more work with smaller brands and ethical brands that I know are taking care of their staff, that I know are sourcing things correctly. And I'm going to try and have conversations within the industry and do things like put this book on my media list and sit down and make this video and talk about how we can make things better and safer. And while I don't at present see a tenable way to make the industry as ethical and as safe as I wish it could be, and at every point in the process, I am not going to stop having conversations about how we get there. And I'm going to hope that maybe sometime in my lifetime, probably not, but maybe sometime in my lifetime or in the generation or two after me, I'll see those things come to light, and I'll see every element of this industry be handled with more care and more compassion and more thoughtfulness, from the people who mine the stones we wear in our bodies, the people who mine the materials that our jewelry is made out of, to the people who manufacture it, to the jewelry designers, to the piercers, and to the front of house. I just want to see an industry where all of us are treated fairly and equally and paid fair livable wages. And it's not, you know, an arm and a leg for a customer to get pierced either. And I don't know how we get there from where we are now, but I do think it starts with difficult conversations like this. So if you're looking for something to read, if you work in the industry, especially if you work in a studio that stocks gold or genuine stones, or if you think that stocking gold and genuine stones is the path that you want to take as a piercer, I think you should still do that. I think that is a way that a lot of studios are able to make money and have a living wage and I would be lying if I said that I thought, studios I worked at could survive without gold. We couldn't. Gold is what keeps food on the table for myself and all of my coworkers, 100%. But I would encourage you to check this one out. I would encourage you to give this one a read, and not stock gold or not sell it or not carry it, but can we all start asking ourselves how we can do better, how we can be better, and can we all start informing ourselves? I mean, God, piercing was supposed to be for the punks and the alternatives. It was supposed to come from indigenous practices and sacred rites and rituals. And here we are now in 2024, and the hallmark of an achievement for a studio is to start carrying gold and diamonds. And half of the people, more than half of the people who have their big goal as being a studio that has solid gold and genuine stone pieces, have no concept, the history of the industry that they are so excited to be a part of as piercing begins to move more towards fine jewelry. And we are so ignorant of the larger systems of power and oppression that exist within the gemstone and the gold industry and the markets. And we're just excited to be the next piercer to post that we put something expensive in a new piercing and it's pretty, and here it is on Instagram. And the other side of that has to be awareness and education and having these difficult and uncomfortable conversations. And part of how we do that is to read books like this and learn this and have these difficult conversations as an industry. I think this is great. I think it's going on my media list. I also really enjoyed Brilliance and Fire. That's already on my media list. I think that is a much more introductory book. And if you're really serious about this element and side of piercing and jewelry making, if it were me, I would read Brilliance and Fire first and then The Last Empire. I think Brilliance and Fire does a really good job of sort of introducing you to some of these players and some of these concepts and just sort of overall concepts about diamonds, diamond quality, diamond grading, things like that, as well as a lot of the history. And then that gives you a great foundation to go into reading The Last Empire and feeling really aware of a lot of the concepts that it's sort of brushing over quickly, as there's simply so much information and history to cover. But I think it's important. I think part of how we do good in this industry isn't just to be a good piercer or a good front of house or a good maker, but it's also the ethics and the morals of what we do. And I think choosing to educate ourselves about these things that do impact our industry and that our industry does impact, so that we can learn how to not cause the same harm that has been caused in the past, or have an honest view of who we're making money for when we're doing things like pushing gold and diamonds as heavily as we often do. I think it's important. I know a lot of people think that I'm an annoying woo-woo piercer when I do some of these reviews and talk about some of these concepts, and a lot of business owners tell me, it shouldn't matter this much. We're all just trying to put food on the table. If you want to have that gripe, have it with Cartier and Tiffany's and the extremely wealthy who are doing this. But I don't know. I think if more people on every single level decided to do their part and try and do better, regardless of if they worked for $1 billion jewelry company or the piercing studio down the street, if we all just cared a little bit more, maybe things could be different. So this is going on my media list. It was a great read, little heavy for recovering from surgery, but a great read nonetheless. And yeah, thanks for sitting down and letting me chat about this one. Very interested to see people's takes in the comments. And if you do read this, please come back, comment, let me know what you thought, especially if you're in the industry. And I can't wait to sit down and chat with y'all again soon. Bye.